Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Talking with Kevin McLemore. Today, our guest has more than 20 years of U.S. and global experience in strategy planning, product launch, medical affairs, research, analytics, and scientific communication. Our guest also has a proven track record of achievement in delivering evidence to support multiple product launches and inline brands of large companies and startups, joint ventures, and alliances and collaboration. Today, I'm going to tell you, she's a personal friend. I am personally honored, and I hope you are honored, to be introduced to our expert guest, Dr. Setareh Williams, PhD in chronic disease, and I'm not even going to try to enunciate epidemiologically because I couldn't do it last time. I'm not going to do it this time. To talk about women in science and the perspectives of life science industry. Now, before I go on, all right, I want to tell you this episode is brought to you by RMK Productions, talking with Kevin and Son and the people you should know. Our mission is through the power of story is to uplift our voices, inspire you, share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple: creating hope, helping other people every single day, because that's what we do here. So I want to welcome my friend and expert in this area of science, technology, engineering, and math, Dr. Setareh Williams. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kevin. I'm very happy to be here. So you are a personal friend of mine for over 2 decades. We've known each other for a long time. And also fitness professional, author, and a life coach. So again, I'm happy to be here. I know the mission of your work is helping others do their best. And hopefully we can talk about the same here for women in health sciences industry today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for I don't know, given my resume. I should let you go ahead and do this show. But to our listeners, I want to give you a little background before we dive into this. And this is when I talk about women in science, I want to talk about the real world. All right. Setareh Williams, she is a graduate, a Yale graduate, I believe. Okay, I want to make sure I got that right. She's a mother, and as she stated before, we are long-term friends. She's also an entrepreneur. All right. She has led a life and a career path that should inspire you. All right. So, Setareh, before we get into the business of talking about the science, technology, engineering, mathematics of STEM and what you do, at some point, I want to reverse and wind back the clock a little bit because we all start from somewhere. You know, I talk about all the time how hard life is for most of us and how we get to the place that we are. You are one of those people that I would list as a super achiever. But we all started someplace. We were all kids. We had someone that influenced us. And I want to take us back to the beginning. Where'd you come from? Where'd you grow up? What was your relationship with your parents? And who pushed that button that turned the lock that opened the door to who you are today? Give us a little background on you, please.
Sure. So in my family, I was lucky. I grew up in a family that was focused on science. My father was a physician. My mother was a nurse, and they're both retired now. And so I was exposed to the field of science. I used to go to work with them sometimes, be in the hospital and see patients, and really inspiring to see my parents work to make patients' life better. And a lot of times these were personal, they became like friends and people that they knew over the years, and part of the community. So that was nice to see. And then when I was studying in high school, I was thinking about possibly becoming a physician myself. And then I went to college at UCLA. I studied biology. I got interested in research and did some research there and decided to get my master's in public health. So I applied to graduate school, and once I was in the master's program, I got a training grant from NIA, and because of that, I decided to stay and get my PhD. So I took a different road than I had expected or set out to do, but it turns out to be great. I then took on a graduate internship program with Pfizer in New York, which led me to the field of outcomes research, or what we call health economics and outcomes research. And that really opened the door to industry for me. So I became aware of what I could do as an epidemiologist working in pharmaceutical industry.
All right. All right. So when you and I talked before we got on the show, I always talked about, and I am so proud of you. I'll say this 100 times. So if I kind of gloat over you, enjoy the moment, because a lot of times we don't get our roses while we are alive. Normally we say these nice things about people when we're standing over a box or. So I'm going to give you your praises. You are a dedicated mother. You've juggled life, and family, and you've done a great job at it. But I have to look at the industry as where there's an imbalance. So I want to talk about the problems and solutions in the real world. Gender equality in the workplace for women is still at a deficit. Women make up to 47% of the global workforce, and yet they still make less money and hold less positions of power in Fortune 500 companies than the men do. And that number is even worse when it comes to ethnic, minority, Black women in this field and whatever. How do you stand head and shoulders above statistic and prevail in this industry?
Yeah, so the points that you bring up are all great, and you're right. There's a still, women have, been in the workforce for a long time. The majority of child rearing, I know this is a huge part of it because I'm a mother of 4, so I've experienced those challenges myself, and I think a lot of it comes also with women's desire to balance their career with their family. And essentially, I think this is changing more recently. In the past, maybe 20 years ago when I got started, it wasn't where it is today. I was fortunate because I worked for a European company. I worked for AstraZeneca while I was having my children, and there was a lot of flexibility around maternity leave and flexibility in scheduling your work hours. So I was fortunate, and it also came down to the fact of who are your managers. So if you had a manager who provided that flexibility and your employer, that made a huge difference. And I know in the recent years, what is also refreshing to see is maybe because of the pandemic, but a lot of companies are offering flexible work arrangements where people can actually work from home more, or that way gain a few more hours a week to manage their what they need to do with their family, etc. Or even, some women I know continue to work, but maybe work at reduced hours. So I think all that kind of helps you sort of keep your foot in the door, and rather than exit the workforce once you do have children, just stay and be up to date, especially in the field of STEM where things are rapidly changing. And that's what I also encourage young moms today, that with my colleagues that I work with or friends, that keep at it, always keep yourself up to date on the latest in your industry, your functional area expertise. And by doing so, you are contributing to your society, you are contributing to science, and you're also, helping build that future for your family and your children. So it all comes down to us helping each other as a community, employers, managers, providing the flexibility, and also encouraging, young parents to continue pursuing what they're passionate about.
You've had a lot of success in your business. I talked to some other people that have success and have not been given the credit of their success because of their male counterparts. Give us a little background on some of your successful experiences that you've had, how you have been able to um, navigate your career in a male-dominant world, especially with the sciences itself. And then I want to talk about how people can get in touch with you before we get into, well, because I mentioned that you were an entrepreneur, and I love authors and entrepreneurs, and I love females that are making a difference. Personally, I think I said this before. I think if we had more women in positions of power in our government, our businesses, and so forth, I think the workforce will create a better balance, and I think we'll be a lot more productive and be a lot more flexible and understanding of how this workforce and how home life balance should be. Because I don't think any man really knows what it's like to understand home life balance, because we are pre-programmed to do one thing: go out and hunt. Some of us are good at it, some of us are not. Go out and provide. Some of us are good at it, some of us are not. And just go out. Some of us are really good at doing that and not coming back. So how do you do that? Let's talk about some of your successes in your business, because again, I am so proud. I want you to gloat over yourself because you've done a lot. Let's talk about from the smallest program that you've done to the biggest, so people will understand when they reach out to you, they're only getting the best. I only showcase the best of the best that comes on here. That's why you're one of those people who should know. And I'm going to shut my mouth and let you do your thing.
Thank you. That's great. Yes, so I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years, and I did have a lot of great mentors, and I credit to them for getting me to this point. I think I mentioned to you once that one of my best mentors, also named Kevin Carwat, he was building a group that focused on real world evidence, AstraZeneca, which was basically what we do as epidemiologists, observational research. So, and I was at a point in my career that I had, foregone some opportunities, because early on when I was having children, there were opportunities, but at the time I did not pursue them or take those, because again, I was trying to balance with my family responsibilities. And then when I got to a point where I realized, okay, now I'm ready to take the next step and get to the career goal that I wanted, I sat down with him. And he used to be a football coach, so he was very, you know, direct
Regimented.
as to how
He was
he was
regimented.
from upstate New York, yeah. So he was very direct as to what I needed to do, and he actually pulled out this sheet of paper and started making a chart as to, these are the capabilities you have, this is what you don't have, this job is what will get you from A to B, but then you need to go to C. So it was really like this plan, mapped out plan. And it was very pragmatic, which I liked, because a lot of time we just tell people, well, work harder, or, do more, but you really need to have a plan. And I say this to, again, my young colleagues, that when they're starting out, what is it that interests you? What is it that you're passionate about? What would you like to do? And then really try to guide them as to how to get there. So you do need to have a plan and something to work towards. So I was lucky that I had this great mentor, and I had others along the way who kind of painted that picture for me, and inspired me to pursue what I wanted to do, and also enabled me by, providing me with, the skill sets that were required. So I tried to encourage the same. And then after I worked in big pharma and I had some experience with smaller companies, I did realize after so many years of doing the work that I was in a position that I considered myself subject matter expert, that I could go off on my own and start my own business to be able to help other companies, especially startups, um, do the project. A lot of the startup companies that I work with, they don't have a large number of employees. They literally have a skeletal crew. They're just in early stages trying to figure out what type of studies they need to do in order to develop their clinical program and essentially ultimately get FDA approval and market access for the use of their drug. So they really need to start small. So I work with them, and essentially my background is in epidemiology, which focuses on observational research, but my function has been in health economics and outcomes research, which I mentioned earlier, which includes doing studies from pre-approval to post-approval, looking at everything from unmet medical need, looking at the competitive landscape, market mapping, all the way to supportive evidence for regulatory submission, and then post-approval, looking at performance of drugs in real world. So now that you have a drug approved and large population of patients are using it, are there any safety signals? How are the products performing? Are they effective as shown in the randomized controlled clinical trials? And essentially they get used by a much broader population of patients. So the idea is you're continuously gaining knowledge about your product even long after it has been approved. So that's what we do. So we could work with, again, companies in early stage development, as well as those that have already gone through commercialization. And it's a continuous learning spectrum throughout the product life cycle. So that's really important. And also recently, in the past, the FDA primarily used this real world data for safety or pharmacovigilance. Sometimes there were these post-authorization safety studies where they require the manufacturer to look at certain outcomes post-approval, because maybe there were some safety concerns, maybe because of the population of patients that the drug is being used in. But more recently, as part of the 21st Century Cures Act and the desire to really accelerate drug approval and get access to medicines earlier for patients, they started setting guidance for real world evidence studies. So these are studies outside of randomized controlled clinical trials to not only look at it post-drug approval, but can we do studies even pre-approval to help inform the FDA decision on the benefit risk assessment? So now there have been some recent examples where the FDA is now looking at drug utilization, even sometimes off-label, to help expand the label indications. So if a drug is already being used in certain populations, it wasn't approved in, but there were no other options. And now we have data from real world showing it does work, it is effective, it is safe. And then using that as supportive information to expand the label indication, to increase use in a new population, etc. So I think just like in my career, I've observed this huge progress with the FDA and consideration of real world data for regulatory decisions. Another thing they have done also, as again, part of this new policy, is patient prioritized endpoint initiative. So the FDA is now listening to the voice of the patient. So the patients are the experts in their own disease and their management. They live with it every day. They know the burden of illness and their symptom management and what matters and what enables them to function and carry out their activities of daily living. So the FDA is now encouraging patients in these discussions when they are reviewing new drugs for approval, because the patient perception of benefit risk may be different than the regulators who don't have that condition, and may be different from the physician who's treating the patients, but they are not in their day-to-day life. So that's also very encouraging, especially in instances where you have a rare disease or a disease with high burden in oncology space, where the patient is willing to take the risk, maybe of some adverse events, in order to reap benefits, even though they may be small, even though they may just increase their longevity by a little bit. From their perspective, maybe that risk is worth it to gain that benefit. So again, I think this whole regulatory approval process has come a long way to make drugs accessible to patients earlier on, and to really understand the patient's perspective in benefit risk assessment.
I am so glad you brought that up, because I've said to you in private, and I've probably said this once or twice, I'm a advocate for people with post-traumatic brain injury, because I deal with that and I suffer from it. I live with it. I don't suffer from it. I don't suffer from anything, because it just makes me a little stronger. But I say all the time is that you have to be the champion of your own problems. And a lot of times we turn to medical practitioners and so forth, and we ask them for help when we're not helping ourselves. We are educating those people. And I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad the FDA. But before we go on and to learning a little bit more about the entrepreneurship, you starting a business, for those that have just tuned in and listening, I have Dr. Setareh Williams, PhD, as our featured guest, talking about science, technology, engineering, and math, talking about STEM, talking about women in this position and perspective. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the world of an entrepreneur, because I know from personal conversations, you left a very high-powered job. You went from being everything to everyone in your industry in order to, your boat was always docked on someone else's dream. And one day you came in, you released the tether to the dock, you looked out over the horizon, you hopped in your boat, and you start selling your own dream, entrepreneur. But before we go on, how do people get in touch with you?
Thank you. So the best way to get in touch with me is through LinkedIn. You can send me a message, and I think my email also is there, so they can get in touch with me through LinkedIn.
All right. You probably don't know, there are a lot of mothers out there that are listening to a podcast that have a baby in arm. There are a lot of people that just pulled into Starbucks. A lot of people that are listening to this podcast that should be working, and they got a pen in hand and going, how do we reach her on LinkedIn? Is your LinkedIn handle Setareh Williams, Dr. Setareh Williams?
Yes, if you put in Setareh Williams, or Setareh Arya Williams is my middle name, it should be there. I don't think there's any other person by that name, but I could be wrong.
All right. So let's talk about being an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
All right. You left a high powered position. I always
Mhm.
talk about people, some failure to launch. People always ask me, when do you think, or when do you know when it's time for you to start your own business? Especially when you've got a nice, secure income, you've got a very comfortable life. But what was the decision that made you go from comfort to being a professional risk taker? That's what I call an entrepreneur, professional risk taker. And what are some of the um, ups and downs? We're going to start with the downs of starting your own business. And what advice would you give to a young woman, either graduating from college, entering this world, or another female in your place that's not being appreciated, recognized, or has the potential to do more and do more on her own, or even come and work for you? Let's start from the very beginning. What made you leave the comfort of a nice, secure income lifestyle of a big company to start your own company?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you are right. It is more comforting to work for another company. But with that said, there is no job that is 100% secure. And in the recent years, we've also seen a lot of layoffs, especially in pharma, and people do get displaced. So it's not a guarantee, but what it was for me after so many years of working in the industry, I just felt that I had the experience to take on more. And it really excited me to just work across a variety of therapeutic areas and different products, and also the engagement with different companies, big and small, just that learning opportunity. I'm a lifelong learner, and I always get a lot of energy from meeting new people and learning more about the industry. And I just was at a point in my career that I thought I had come to the top, going back to that initial chart that my manager, Kevin, laid out for me, that, well, this is a career ladder. This is how you go up to get to where you want. And I did get to where I wanted. And at that point, I felt that, okay, I've done this. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm capable of contributing and also developing new talents. So I thought going on my own would enable me not to only build that life for myself, find something that's really meaningful and engaging for me, but also having the ability to help develop others and bring them, sort of speak, under my wings to educate and develop and set them on their career path. So yes.
So what are the um, any shortcomings, any problems with starting your business? Because I know everything. I mean, right now things are smooth sailing. Anything that you can advise someone that is contemplating making that same decision today? Because there is someone that's listening to this that are sitting at the edge of their seat. And I would say, if you're sitting that close
Yeah.
to your dream, I say jump. Anything that they should avoid, any mistakes that you made opening up that door to your dream, and that you can kind of warn someone. And tell us about your first win in coming out being your own boss.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned the word jump because, as you know, I did jump off a cliff a couple of years ago,
All
but that
right.
was under different circumstances. I was skiing. I jumped off a cliff in backcountry, and I did tear up my ACL. And as you know, you nursed me back to health. We did a lot of training together for 6 months, and it was a long road, and that was all right before I started my business. So it was probably one of the hardest times in my life, just recovering. It's a complex surgery and a long recovery, but I've come out stronger and faster as a result. And again, a lot of parallels in life that way. So I started on this journey with my own business. I knew that it was going to be hard, but I knew that it would be worth it and that I had the capability to do it. So, and I learned along the way that, it takes time. And I think a lot of time people start something, they quit because they don't see the long-term outcome, or they focus on the immediate results. And for me, I understand and I expect there are going to be ups and downs, but I know that if I give it everything and I stay focused, I will get through and ultimately have a successful outcome. It's recently started, so we are in the growth mode, but we have a lot of successes already. As I mentioned, I work with a lot of startups. They want things done fast. They want it done right. They don't have a lot of resources to waste. So as a small company, I am able to do that because we have, again, I work with subject matter experts. I'm able to bring in um, functional expertise specific to a particular project. So whereas you have larger companies and they mass hire and then assign people to different projects who may not have necessarily the right experience or expertise. We are highly we have a high experience individuals in their own field, so I'm able to match people to the right project so they can get it done right. You don't want to redo. Small companies, a small budget, tight timelines, they do wait till the last minute to invest and do the studies. So we want to really get it done right the first time. So I think that's the advantage. And again, for people that want to start their own business, and I would say talk to other entrepreneurs, talk to people in your area to just get an understanding from their experience. But also networking is huge. And again, in my career, I've been very lucky. I've had a lot of mentors and friends and colleagues and peers that I was able to communicate with, bounce ideas off, maybe even share common interests and collaborate with on different projects. So it's important to have those connections. And for those of you who are in industry, don't just have the connections within your company, but join organizations outside of your company that give you exposure, and really you can meet people outside of your organization at other companies, and really that opens more doors for you. So always, focus on that personal development, share experiences, and work towards your goal and don't give up.
I
So,
will tell you, I got to throw away my notes because you're going through. I'm going through my list of my questions I want to ask, and one of the things is I was going to ask you is why hire a boutique, a small company like yours versus going to an established brand. I'm still going to ask it because I know you're going to answer it another way. I love the way the fact you said, in short, surround yourself with like-minded people, people that you can learn from and be inspired from. And I'm a firm believer that no one can do this one thing that we call life alone. So collaboration is key. I'm glad you said that. So for young people that are listening to this, um, females that are in this marketplace, I'm trying to pick my words because you never know how someone's going to interpret based on specifics on how people want to be identified. So whoever it is, I'm talking to you that's providing you an opportunity. So, leave me on air. So I'm going to ask you,
mhm.
what are the benefits of going to your company versus going to a big branded or big box company in your field in pharma? What's the benefits?
Yes. So, as I mentioned, in terms of assigning individuals to work on a particular project, if you come to Star Biopharma Consulting, we basically will give you the subject matter experts for the therapeutic area that you're interested in, and really fit for purpose data. We don't license data, we don't work with one particular data provider, but we will use the data that is fit for purpose for your study. So let me talk a little bit about maybe data that we use for observational research. So I mentioned before that FDA requires 2 randomized controlled trials for approval of new products, and essentially the data outside of those clinical trials are data that are generated in everyday clinical practice setting. So every time you go to your doctor, the doctor is sitting, typing notes, asking you how you feel, like all the information they're gathering, they're entering into their PC, which is basically your electronic health records. And then insurance companies also, when providers submit claims, those claims, their administrative claims, also get accumulated. So every time you go to a pharmacy to fill a prescription, every time you're admitted to the hospital or have a doctor visit, there's a record of all your healthcare encounters. So the data are anonymized, and essentially for research, the HIPAA compliant that you signed, you allow for your data to be used for research. And that's what we use essentially we look at data in real world to look at treatment patterns, characterization of patients, how's this drug being used in real world, what are the outcomes associated with the use of this drug versus other drugs, and then what are the costs. Ultimately, we want to do studies that show the value of a new therapy. Is it reducing costs? Is it reducing hospital readmissions, meeting some quality of care standards? Is it reducing hospital length of stay? And ultimately, you're improving health and reducing costs. That's the goal of good healthcare, right? So in our company, there are different payers that provide data based on their population of health plan enrollees. So what we do actually, we work through identifying who are the patients that we need to do a study on. So instead of going to one particular provider, we identify the data through a network of providers and make sure that we are only using data that are relevant and meaningful to our study objectives. So again, more efficient, lower costs, and trying to meet our customers' timelines. So it really comes down to working with the right database, right study design, bringing in the right experts to inform the study design. And ultimately, the goal is not just publication, which we also do, the scientific communication, which goes on to educate the payers of why they should put the drug on the formulary, give confidence to the physician why they should be prescribing, and even the patient, because now they know the drug is working and these are the benefits and they're low risk of side effects or safety issues. But then ultimately, how can we use the data to help identify patients at high risk, identify who's suitable to be treated? And that type of information also gets used by health systems. There's a lot of predictive analytics that go into it. So the data that we generate then can be developed into tools that can help identify the patients that are most likely to benefit from the new therapies.
All right, thank you. And for those of you out there that are in this space that are looking for someone to address a problem and a solution, I'm going to summarize because I know you personally, Setareh, what she just said to you. One, her company makes it personal. You know, the difference between a big boutique and a big branded company versus a small. The other thing is we pay attention to detail. And again, we believe it's personal and we treat every client like it's the only client that we have. You know, we're there to service you, not to benefit from the relationship, but to service you to make sure the relationship continues to grow. We want to grow a relationship over time. And the other value to your service is that I'm going to say it the way we say it in private. Your company gets shit done. That's what you do. All right. We don't waste time because time is money and it's efficient. All right. So if I can say it like that, I have two questions, or it could be one question. All right. There are a lot of women that came out, a lot of females, let me correct myself, that came out of COVID that were either stay-at-home moms, that were at the end of their career and had to choose work-life balance between a job and taking care of your kids. Because one of the things that COVID taught us is that what real child care was, taking care of your own damn kids. The other thing is there are a lot of young women that are juniors and seniors that are part of either the 4,000 universities and colleges throughout this country. 107 of those are historically Black colleges that are graduating, that are studying STEM. For a woman that that is extremely good at math and science, that has not been working in this industry, how would you recommend, or what advice would you give her from stepping into this space? And what advice would you give to a junior or senior about to graduate college and entering this space, what they need as far as education, what they need as far as experience, and what opportunities is your company, are you in a position to either mentor, intern, or whatever? Either one of these two questions. women in transition, or women about to transition into real world?
Yes. So for women in transition, you bring up a good point. Obviously, the pandemic was tough, and I had some colleagues who had infants at home and toddlers at home, and it was very challenging. They had to come up with a schedule with their spouses to work around the clock to get the work done with the kids being there. So definitely challenging, and I think for some of us, I mean, I always encourage women to, again, everybody's circumstances are different. Some people can step out of workforce for a while and be able to survive financially. Some cannot. So I can't speak for everyone, but I do say if you have the ability to take the time off, if you actually need it, you have that option. There's Family Medical Leave Act for 3 months. And thankful that that was passed a long time ago. So you may have a family situation. You may be also taking care of your elders. You may be constrained with your kids. So if you need to take the time off, take the time off, because first thing that's important is your mental health. So you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of your family. So you have to be in a good place physically, mentally, to be able to work. And also, if you're not able to work to full capacity, just be honest and tell your prospective employer or whoever you're working with what your limitations are. So it's good to be honest upfront that, if you can only work 2 days a week or 3 days or certain hours. And you'll be surprised, most employers are very open to that. Now there's a lot of focus on businesses with providing that flexible arrangement, and that really enables people who are just transitioning to get in until they're at the point where they can go full time. But even if you're not able to go in immediately because you're lacking maybe some experience, and again, like, things change a lot in STEM. Like if you're out of the workforce for 2-3 years, you are behind. And so you can also continue educating yourself while you're taking time off. You could get certified or go to professional training, but if you don't have the funds to do that, you can still learn on your own. There's a lot of free tools and webinars, etc. You can still do research and do your own work while you're getting ready to come back. But just going back to my original story with my manager, Kevin, like, do have a path, and again, talk to your mentors, talk to others, have a path, have a plan, have a goal, and work towards that goal and understand what it takes to go from one step to the next. So you're not just, trying to get in, but you don't know which way and how, but just really have a pragmatic approach about it. So for the kids that are in college now, and it's interesting because my first two kids are, one just graduated from college and studied biology, which I'm very proud. That's what I studied. And my second one is also studying biology. And I encourage them, and as do a lot of colleges, to do internship and also do a lot of shadowing. So depending on the field you want to go in, sometimes you think, well, maybe I'd like to be a physician, but do you know what the life of a physician is day to day and what type of physician? And then try to find opportunities, mostly in academic settings. They do allow people to shadow, and whether it's you going to the doctor's office or you could be going to a hospital. I used to do it. When I was at UCLA, I went to the operating room. So it was kind of getting that exposure of what does the doctor actually do all day? And is that something that I like to do? So obviously doing that, participating in internship programs. If you go to your alumni association, it's a huge resource. So where you're going to college, go through the list of alumni, see where they're working, what industries they're in. If they are where you want to go, start contacting the alumni, send blind resumes, express your interest in working. There might be paid internship, there may be unpaid internship. And at minimum, you can start a dialogue with the alumni to get an idea of where to go, or maybe they have some contacts. And ultimately, the more people you talk to, the better the understanding you will get about the possible areas that you can go to. But again, it comes down to that networking, capitalizing on and leveraging your alumni network, and really letting everybody know what you're interested in, so they can find those opportunities for you.
Man, I mean, I don't mean to say man. I don't even know what the right thing to say. You are so smart. You are so brilliant. I do want to ask this question, and this was not
Or
on
by
my
experience.
this
Thank
was
you.
not a part of my notes or on questions I
Mhm.
should ask, but I do have to ask this because it's been on the forefront of everyone's conversation, both the pros and cons. How does STEM, I mean, not STEM, how does AI
Mhm.
uh, mix with STEM? Is it a welcome guest, or is it something that we should um, be cautious with?
Um, that's an interesting question. And essentially, we have been kind of looking at that in healthcare for a long time, in terms of understanding. Again, my focus is in terms of healthcare, looking at big data, population level data, understanding patterns in terms of disease area and treatment and outcomes. So when we think about AI, a lot of this that we use in healthcare is more about predictive analytics and what they call really making sense of the different data points and understanding who's going to be the patients at the highest risk for an event. How do we identify those patients? And ultimately, it's more about like precision medicine. So when it comes to health industry, having the right patient on the right treatment at the right time. So a lot of these studies that we're doing now is really about that precision medicine and using making sense of the data. But I know in other fields they're using AI in a variety of other ways. But again, I'm just talking about the science and health sciences perspective specifically.
I appreciate you answering that because I do know that AI has been around since 1951. It was originally introduced because of data, because of it wanted to streamline the automobile industry. It also wanted to create data for healthcare um, and the sciences. So, we've been living with AI and don't know it. I mean, look down at your
Yeah.
phone, ask Siri.
Commercials.
Yeah,
Yep.
ask Siri.
Marketing.
I was gonna say ask Alexa, but I'm in my room and Alexa will answer, so I don't want her to do that while we're recording. But I want to thank you for coming on. I do have one more question before we wrap up. You're so great. Um,
Thank you.
but I do want people to reach out to you. So in detail,
Mhm.
what's the name of your company? What's the best way of reaching you? Because there are going to be people that are going to want to know more about your company. There are going to be people that uh, want to utilize your services of your company. We already know that you are the one, and you're the one that they should turn to for personal care and professional care. And uh, and then I have one more question to ask you about your ask. So, will you please tell our guests, our listeners, how do they get in touch with Dr. Setareh Williams?
Sure. Again, thank you for this opportunity, Kevin. And I share your goal of helping others every single day. And I hope, again, both professionally and also if there's like we talked about, young students and young professionals, if they want to reach out to me, I'll be happy to help with that as well. I actually am on the Yale School of Public Health Alumni Association and also in the mentorship program. So it's something that I get energized from, helping with young professionals and providing that mentorship and guidance for those who want to enter the life sciences industry. But to get in touch with me, You can either go to our website, which is www.starbiopharmaconsulting.com, or you can go to my LinkedIn page, Setareh Williams, and I have my email address in there, or you can just message me to connect with me. Either way is fine.
All right, thank you, thank you. One last question. I always ask, it used to be 98, 99% of every guest on here, but I have had a couple of guests. I never asked this, and there were reasons why. I always ask your ask. You know, many people that do what I do in podcasts, they're looking for big numbers, lots of followers and so forth. I'm not interested. My success in my business, I've always surrounded myself with people that have a higher call to action. So my listeners, those who subscribe and follow, are people that have a high call to action. They don't drive by an accident, they stop and help. I love that the 10,000 people that listen, I appreciate it, and I hope we entertained you. But the 4,500 people that are active subscribers and growing every single week, I want to tell you it's much appreciated. I'm probably the only podcaster out there that's had 4 people to date. I'm going into my second year that someone has granted or answered the call to someone's one life dream. We live our whole lives and not have one dream come true. And I know 4 people personally that strangers have reached out and answered the call. So if I were to ask you your one ask, the one thing that you would like to see come true, it could be big or small, and I will tell you to ask big. What would your ask, ASK, be?
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to ask. Like I mentioned, I'm very passionate about mentorship and helping young professionals find their way. So my ask is if I had the funding to create a program, more like an internship program with graduate schools in epidemiology and public health, to find internship and also a way for enabling the students to enter life sciences industry, that would be great. So essentially a program for students getting their master's or PhD in epidemiology and public health, to help enable them enter pharmaceutical industry, biotech industry.
And so to my listeners, remember what our ask was. And remember, every big company started out as a small company, just like Dr. Williams' company. And every person that has done very well in investments and whatever has invested in startups. And startups turned into be Amazon. Startups have turned into Tesla. Startups have turned into Netflix. Startups, you name it. You know, there's a bunch of companies that started up and with a small investment, all of a sudden they've got a big return on the investment. I know Setareh personally. I know what her commitment to quality. I know her standards are extremely high, and I know that she takes everything personal. So if you want to work with someone that knows how to get stuff done, all right, I won't say the other word again. I'll probably get edited out. Um, Dr. Williams, this is the person you should go to. For those of you that want to learn a little bit more, you know, we will have her information in the description page. Please reach out to her. She's a very approachable person. 24/7, she is there for you. She has taken some shots in the process of going through the business. We don't need to talk about how many times that you've gotten down and how many times you've gotten up. But I will tell you, knowing her personally, you knock her down once, you can knock her down twice, but the third time she's going to duck. And be careful what she comes up with, because she knows how to get stuff done. So with that said, we have covered a lot of information talking about STEM. We have also got a chance to know someone that we showcase, a person you should know. We don't do a lot of celebrities. We do people that are giving back. And you have been kind enough to give back and share your story. And for my listeners, at some point, if we've given you information or touched you in a way or motivated you to take that step, like Setareh says, jump. You don't have to go through rehab with Kevin in order to jump, because I know you're going to land on your feet, because that's the type of people that we have reached. If you like what you've heard and would like to see this video, go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. If you liked it well enough and you want to inspire somebody else, I will ask you to share it. And if you really like the information that we've given you and our guests, Setareh, you're always welcome back. And, the success of our show is like any other business. 90% of the guests that comes on our show has been referred by another guest. So please like and share this video with someone that has a high call to action. And I appreciate it. And if you guys would like to be a guest on RMK production or any of our productions on my show, Talking Wit, WIK, whoa, I can't even spell. My head's messing up. Talking Wit, WIT, Kevin and Son, please go to info@rmkproductions with an S.org. Setareh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I would say, find 1,000 reasons to be kind to someone. That's my hashtag. My grandfather always said, when you get to a point in your life that you can help someone else out, it is your duty to do so. He says, reach one, teach one, and we'll fade to black. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Williams, my friend Setareh.